Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino DeGregory, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino DeGregory.
Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Gino DeGregory. Today we have another amazing guest with us, Mike Taylor. He's the founder and CEO of Empathetic. Actually known Mike for over a decade, and I've seen so much success, so much great things coming out, and who he is as a person, just as an individual, always impressed me. Kind of built a really strong partnership throughout the years in the way he not only leads his employees and partners, right, where we're collaborating, communicating. It's always been kind of very impressed. So thank you, Mike, for joining us. If you don't mind, could you please share with our audience a bit about your professional journey and the experiences you have shaped your leadership style?
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks for the kind words, pun intended. So my journey started over 30 years ago. I left a job that I had with McDonnell Douglas at Kennedy Space Center doing some NASA software development. And, in the 3 years that I was there, I was very young, just out of college, learned some interesting things about leadership styles and folks that were working there. It was government work. So, more on that later, but ended up going off to found my first company, which ran for about 10 years. And I've been doing Empathetic for about the next 20 something since then. So, the things that really kind of formed my leadership style, I did a lot of reading early on, to try to figure out, what I wanted to be as a leader and how I wanted to lead, and took some courseware and did some of that kind of stuff. I had a business degree, so I'd learned a little bit about that, but they don't teach you a lot about real leadership. It's more about, in college, it's more about how you do things. Right. There's a little bit of leadership stuff in there, but I don't know what it's like these days, but I didn't learn a whole lot about leadership then. But then over the years, I also kind of tried to make note of, because basically we're a software services company, so we deal with, lots and lots of companies. We've had hundreds and hundreds of companies dealing with all levels of management and organizational structures over the years. So we've got to observe a lot of people, hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of people, and got to see a lot about kind of the way people lead. And when you're deeply embedded in these organizations for a while, sometimes months or years, you get to, you're no longer like the consultant. You get to kind of the inside view, the unvarnished view. Right. And so got to see some things that I really liked and things that I didn't like, the way people treated other folks and the way they led. So I think what shaped my whole leadership style has just been an amalgamation of all these things over the years, I think. And it's kind of hard to describe my leadership style. I tried to follow early on, some of the reading I did was, about the upside down pyramid and how you're really there to support your team and not the other way around. It's not, if you think about leading from above by dictating and forcing decisions down, there's a certain amount of leadership that has to be that. You have to have the vision, you have to understand where you want to go, and you have to communicate those things clearly. But I've always tried to be more of a, I guess, hands-on versus hands-off. Let folks kind of find their way, right? And do that. Create a framework for their success. So that's kind of the way I've viewed leadership, and kind of like the Simon Sinek. Leaders eat last, and you let people figure their way, and then you give them the support they need.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for participating and being part of this podcast. This is our 16th episode, and really enjoyed all the guests so far. And you bring your different perspective, and your career there is amazing. So congratulations on all your success for sure. One question that I asked, the first question after introducing yourself, is what does a kind leader mean to you?
That's a good question. I've thought about this. I've listened to some of the episodes. Unfortunately, I haven't caught them all, but I've listened to several. Kind leadership to me is not about just being nice, right? It's about really more about being empathetic to where people are and helping them try to become the best versions of themselves, especially at work, but overall as well. So it's really about giving them the support they need to do that. It's certainly not about just being nice on every occasion, because that's not what people need sometimes. Sometimes people need, a stern adjustment. But when you do it, you do it through the lens of what's best for them, not what's most expeditious. And I guess that's the hardest thing to do. Sometimes it's, you just want to tell somebody, do it this way, or you're wrong. Even if you're 100% sure, and maybe they really are, you've got to put it through the framework of how can I use this as a learning opportunity for this person? and how can I
Right.
really help them grow through whatever these challenges are? Because I think that's where most of the opportunity for leading really comes, is in the challenging moments. It's not when everything's going great, right? I mean, sometimes
Right.
yeah, we're doing great, we want to do a little better or whatever, but it's really in those real challenging moments that requires you to really kind of sum up the best of what you can bring as a leader. And I think just as a side note, a technique I use, you didn't ask, but is you've heard about it more and more now with electronic communications, people distancing themselves from immediate responses because it's so easy to do. I've always found that kind of stepping away from a particular situation, at least for a few minutes, maybe a day or two, maybe a week or two, before you decide to address it. Now, if it's something that's really timely and you have to address it, and something's going on, then you have to step in and do it then. But giving myself the time to decide how to use it, a particular challenge with somebody, it helps me frame the best way to approach that, I think.
Gotcha. So it's truly understanding, if you have an issue, right, not reacting with emotions, right? Because sometimes the emotions may not have the right intention to it, right, behind it, right? It's like, oh, you react to it, and the first reaction tends to be very passionate sometimes, right? And it could be misinterpreted, or sometimes those words that come out when we're passionate are so powerful that inhibits or doesn't allow the individual to now focus on the actual problem. Now they're focusing on, oh, shoot, I'm getting reprimanded, or I'm not going to look good for my boss, or I'm not going to be able to say. So
Right.
the energy now has shifted from the actual learning of what happened and how you can avoid it to now I have a fear to how am I going to get through this, right?
Right.
Does that make
Oh,
sense?
absolutely.
Like how you're
Yeah, and it changes the dynamic, and it takes away from kind of that learning opportunity, and maybe even what you're trying, whatever action you're trying to get at that moment, because people kind of go into defensive mode, right? When you use that kind of emotional language that can put people into a kind of a corner, which is not necessarily the best place for them to work out of. They're already in a corner if there's a challenge, right? Don't want to make it worse.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the biggest things I keep hearing, like really understanding before reacting and caring about, okay, well, what happened, right? Because I can't remember where I read this or I heard this, we talked about this, is instead of coming in, it's like the numbers weren't right or they didn't deliver a particular quality or something, instead of saying, why was not this done correctly? Or why did you not meet those numbers? I think the first question is more about the individual. Hey, is everything okay?
Right.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Everything at home okay? Right? Like truly understanding and get the information about what is the environment that this person is going through prior to really making it more about the challenges he or she is facing with that.
Yeah, you just took one of my favorite readings that I ever did. It was, I'm sure you read it, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite one in there is seek first to understand before being understood. You just took that to the next level, right? It's not just understand what happened, like with those numbers, right? You're taking it to that level of understand what's behind it, what's going on with that individual, why they didn't, perform as they had promised they would, or we thought that they were going to, and make sure that you're looking at the whole thing and that you're really, I guess, maybe working towards a solution together rather than, just saying, you didn't do that, why not? Kind of gets back to that other conversation, puts them in a defensive mode. I think that helps really set people at ease too, when they understand that you really do care, right, about what's going on with them.
Yeah, and they're not just a number, they're not just, code. If you're in software, or you're not just, hey, why these things are not happening, right?
Exactly.
And you peel it back, and it's really about the person. We're all humans. We're all here for a reason. We're here to experience this world, right? So I think we have the power and the influence to work with our folks to make sure that, like you said earlier, right, to build the better version of themselves, right, at the end of the day, because we want that. We want the better they get, the better they become, the better they'll perform and do a more quality job with our customers, right? So it's really about the people. It's really about making sure, right?
Yeah, and I think that begins with an assumption that's hard to remember sometimes in the heat of whatever's going on in business and things that are happening day to day, which is people really want to do. You have to assume everybody wants to do the best job that they can do. Doesn't mean that it's always happening, but if it's not, back to what you said, let's dig into a little bit deeper than just you didn't perform, do better, right? It's really because they wanted to. Everybody wants to.
Right.
There's very few examples I can think of where I've experienced people in my organization or other organizations I'm working with, but the intent wasn't there. Now, sometimes because of management styles, sometimes because of situations, people do start to disengage a little. Quiet quitting, active disengagement, all those kind of things. People mailing it in, all the phraseology that happens. I've seen a lot of that, but it's not because they didn't want to. At some point, maybe they just didn't feel that they were in a position where they could navigate their way out of it successfully, so they started to disengage, which is a whole different set of problems that you have to address with folks.
Well, but you bring up a good point, right? One of the things that I talk about as a kind leader is not only leading with empathy, but making the connection. And the connection is through communication, through talking, through understanding, right? Those different things. And if the connection is there, and sometimes the individual might take time to connect. And that's the other thing that I've learned, on my end is everybody's different. And, the way I picture it is not to compare people with plants or flowers, but if you're building, you're building, you're building like a garden, right? Or you're putting together a garden, certain flowers are going to require certain things. Some want more water, some want more sun, some want more shade, right? And understanding what they need in order for them to grow. You can't sit there and start yelling at this flower and be like, come on, grow, right? It's like you plant it, you water it, and then you let it and allow it to be.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, there's one of the individuals I work with loves the term margin. Create margin for folks, right? Create a little bit of margin so that it's not always back to back to back things or whatever. Like your example is great. Give a little margin to the plants. Let them flourish.
Yeah, and because now we're in the time of speed is to market, and everybody wants it now, right? And that is impacting a lot of, the organizations out there where they're demanding speed, they're demanding obviously quality as well, but they're demanding so much that you're in that constant state of I would say fear, right? Or the scarcity, because I need to get this done, and not allowing it to be, give it the margin. I like that, right? Give the individual or the project or even the organization the margin it needs to really flourish and become what they need to be, and not necessarily be in there pushing,
Right. And that goes back to that macro management and everything else, or micromanagement. And, that's one of the things that leads to the active disengagement and the quiet quitting and stuff like that. It's like, well, if you don't trust me to do my job, then, anything I do is going to be corrected anyway. So I'll wait for you to correct me. And that micromanagement stuff, it's all about not giving people the margin to learn and do their own thing and flourish. And part of flourishing is making mistakes.
Right. And with AI, let's pull a thread on that, right? Like, we don't want to create robots, right? But with AI, essentially, it's allowing us to speed the even process, to go even faster, right? But I think what's going to require in the next decade is the creativity as well as the individuals to have the right mindset, the right energy to not only influence, but deliver value in the things that you do by leveraging all these different technologies and doing the things that you're passionate about, that you're given the chance to grow and do, right? And putting it all together in an organization that appreciates who you are as an individual, that will let you do the things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. We could have probably a whole multiple podcasts on the impact of AI and jobs and all those things that are going on. Yeah, I think that what you said makes 100% sense. And a key to that, though, is people are going to have to understand what the technology can and can't do, because AI can sort of fake empathy, if you will, or emotion. You can have it, depending on your prompting and everything else, you can have it do those things. So it's really going to be a matter of everyone understanding at their own level and the management level what is possible and what these tools are doing, what they're not doing. And in our space, and we do a lot in the project management space, as you know, looking at projections, they're saying that as many as 80% of project management tasks will be automated by 2030, just 6 years. But at the same time, other studies are saying there's going to be 25 million new jobs. So what that means is to your point, I'm taking a small point and making a bigger one out of it, but there's going to be a lot more emphasis, I think, on the human aspects of it, because the AI is going to be doing this automation stuff. So the only thing you can infer from those kind of projections is people, their own especially in project management. It's a lot of leadership, a lot of influence management in project management, because you may not have control over the resources in your customer or whatever, right? Those people don't necessarily report to you. So you have to look at ways that you can really get the most out of people. And I think what this impact, at least in the field of project management of AI, is going to be, is it's going to have a profound effect on making sure that people become better leaders. They're going to, project managers are going to move out of their kind of space that they spend a whole lot of their time on now, about being analysts and understanding what's going on, a lot of data manipulation, these kind of things. As AI takes those things over, they're going to have to focus more on the human aspects of how do I get the most out of my people. So I think it's a very important thing to think about as we grow, and how the skilling and everything will evolve over, like you said, over the next 6 to 10 years.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring it up with your background in project management, right? That's a leadership position in everything that you do, right? In different organizations, stuff like that. So I really appreciate your perspective. And with the AI, I know you have a book on AI as well, a little plug in there, right? It brings it together because, project management, AI, to your point, and what I'm trying to say too is the human side of it. You still can't truly replicate that, right? You still need to make sure that you're empathetic, right? You can fake it in a way, but truly it's going to be about, as the maturity of technology continues to evolve, AI is going to continue to take over the human side, and how you lead, how you influence, how you take care of your people is going to be by far the most important thing. It already is, but it's going to continue to be very important.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say it's going to go beyond being very important. It's going to be critical. It's going to be critical. It's going to be the thing that separates successful organizations from those who aren't, is how well they can continue to really work with their folks to make them better leaders too, right? We're not just talking about one layer, right? Your direct reports. It's easy to kind of get in that paradigm, but as you do it, and you kind of build this, like you said, the kind leadership, the empathy, the really focusing on people's leadership skills, they will convey that throughout the rest of the organization. And everyone they come into contact with, even in partner organizations or customer organizations. So I think it's something that can, if you do it right, will spread and create a very positive ripple effect.
Beautiful. I appreciate that. Maybe we can keep talking down the road about maybe how do we incorporate some of the kind leadership in your project management philosophy, as part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never know.
I think it'd be a fantastic thing to do.
I appreciate that. A few more questions. Like you said, we can talk all day on technology, as you and I love AI, but bringing it back to kind leadership, do you have any experience, some examples of how you've experienced it, how you led with empathy, or you've had bosses out there that had, that kind of influence with you on how to treat and how to lead, through that?
So I haven't actually had a boss per se, other than customers in many, many years.
That's true.
But I also like to joke with folks that say that you haven't had a boss. It's like, I've had hundreds. All of our customers are our bosses, right?
That's right.
I can think of a few folks who were, some that were more on the kind of the micromanagement, do things very direct, not necessarily kind in their approaches, but very, very smart. They could get results. But I don't know that they created long-term value for their constituents, for their folks, and even for what they were trying to do, because almost everything in my world is related to some form of project outcome or some kind of initiative. The reverse of that, or I guess the other end of that spectrum, is I can think of a few folks I've worked with, director level, CIO level folks who were very empathetic, but also very smart and very demanding, but at the same time, kind and again, empathetic with their folks and trying to get the best out of their teams. And their teams seemed to stay more cohesive. You didn't have near as much turnover. You had more loyalty. They didn't have to be asked to go the extra mile. If a project was running late or something was going on, they were the first to volunteer to come in and do whatever the work was. And sometimes in our world, sometimes that means a lot of work. It means weekends, evenings, sometimes all-nighters to get something done on deadline, because there's a lot of dependencies with other things that are going on in these big enterprise organizations. So I really have seen, watching some of these folks, how their folks react to it. And it really is, there's more success there, right? And when you see that, you go, there's more to it than just because who I want to be or I want to help folks out. It actually yields much better results.
And I think the biggest thing, as you're sharing that, I think of why people are not doing that as much. And I think it's the fear of feeling like I have to be vulnerable. I have to lead with kindness, and that's a weakness. And I want to emphasize here, the listeners, and I say this in every episode, is, kindness is not a weakness. Kindness is actually a strength, right? And being able to be vulnerable and lead with empathy, it's a different level. Like, it's so powerful. To your point, people will listen, will appreciate, and will go far when you treat them with, respect, with kindness, and truly care. Because there's a difference, right? People will not go far or will quit, like you said, or all those different terminologies that the people are saying, right? Because they're not doing that. So for the audience, don't be afraid of taking a chance or taking the leap in just being your genuine self. If you are, a kind person, you don't have to be mean or step on people to go farther, right? You can help people out. So,
and again, it doesn't mean that you're not demanding. You may have to be demanding, and and that's what good leaders do. I think about, even outside of the context of profession and everything else, going all the way back to high school and college, there were a few teachers I can remember that made a big difference on me. And maybe I was not the best student from time to time. Sometimes it was good, sometimes not too much. I had all these other things going on. Things that teenagers in early 20s get a long time ago. But I still remember getting very distracted. And, they would help bring you back to earth. And the ones who did it best were both demanding and compassionate at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you can't just give people a pass. That's not what kind means, right? It means that you're being empathetic to what they, like you said, to where they are and helping them be better. And then I still like, this concept of the ripple effect, because like you were saying, you help somebody out and you're kind and you're empathetic to their, most, not all, but many people will take that on, and they'll look at you, if you're a leader and above them in some organizational structure or whatever, and say, I see that that's working and I want to be like that. And then they can be more successful. And that ripple effect can be a many to one kind of relationship, or many to many, one to many relationship.
Absolutely. What I call that, I'm trying to coin it, is maybe I should get it copyrighted, is generational impact.
Yeah.
Right? We're impacting generations. It's not just that one person, and that person who interacts with other people and other people and other people, right? To your point. So that's great. I mean, I think one of the things that we talk about here is that just coming back to the being genuine and just being, I like the idea of just not necessarily when I use the word demanding, to your point, right? It is. I remember too. I wasn't a bad kid, but I was also, stretch the limits. Yeah. Let's call it that, right? And I vividly remember it was a coach. It was like, man, you have so much. He looked at me in the eye. He's like, Gino, you have so much potential. Stop being a knucklehead, right? And let's do X, Y, and Z. And you still remember that, and I still remember, right? Years and years, decades ago. So,
and I'm sure X, Y, and Z wasn't all easy, right? Some of it was probably really made you stretch. You had to break some of the paradigms that you were working in. Maybe there was a little laziness here or there, and I know it was on my part when I played sports and stuff. And you had to get past that and understand why you needed to lean in doing those extra reps or whatever it was. But it made you better.
Absolutely. So speaking of better, what is another question that I ask is, what does success mean to you?
Oh, that's a great question. So in organizational success, to me, there's always the P&L, the balance sheet perspective of it, about building up and building teams and building more profitability and all those things. But that's not the number one marker of success for me. One of my marks for success is actually longevity of an organization, a group, relationships. We like to pride ourselves on having a high level of employee engagement and a very low level of turnover compared to a lot of industry stats and things like that. And I think that means more to me than necessarily maximizing, not to say you don't want to maximize profit and, build your balance sheet and all those things, but really, if you do those things, you hear this in the coaching metaphor a lot. If you help people be the best version of themselves, everything else will take care of itself. To a greater or lesser degree. You still have to, part of that is people have to be empowered to do those things. But I think success is really about seeing people be the better versions of themselves and really, I know it sounds kind of passé, but that's really it. I mean, when you do that, the rest does start to take care of itself.
Right. So essentially, seeing the success of others, right, in the organization flourish really allows you to, go back to, hey, I'm making an impact, right? And seeing that growth, seeing that potential, seeing that, that better version of those individuals, it's something special for sure.
It really is.
And I definitely seen it, in how you carry yourself, you lead the team out there in Innovative E, and I've admired that and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm sure they
Likewise.
do too.
You do a great job with your team.
I appreciate it. So as we go into the closing segment here, one of the questions that I like to ask all my guests here is, if you could have coffee with anyone alive or from the past, who would it be and why?
That is a great question. I've thought about this some, and I the only one of the best I could come up with is actually somebody personally, and that's John Chambers. Always, I was with my first company, we did a lot of distributed infrastructure work. So that was in the day when, Cisco was their heyday of getting out there and really building their whole market leadership and everything else. And so I really admired the work he did to really take Cisco from, really not on the map to being one of the world's largest organizations. And the way he did it, he seemed to do it with a lot of finesse and without a lot of brashness. He just he almost seemed effortless. And I'm sure it wasn't effortless to go through all they did, even through moving through, technology wise, basically almost creating or at least owning like that whole VoIP space. It just transformed industries and what they were doing. In my first company, we were very involved, like I said, in doing a lot of that kind of work. So I got to see the results of it. Never got to meet him though, like you have. So I thought that, he just did an amazing job of bringing the company to absolute top tier, top of the game. And he seemed to do it in a way, at least from afar, that was the right way, treating people right. Cisco, like any company, went through, hirings and layoffs and everything else. I have a friend who used to work for him, an engineer, and he did really well with him. But I think, he seemed to do things the right way. So he seems like a really smart and very successful person.
For sure, all of the above. And, I did have the privilege of meeting them a couple of times and had good conversations. So maybe the coffee, we can make that a reality someday. Awesome. No promises, but maybe, you never know. He is definitely a person that cared about culture. He mentions that all the time when he talks to other entrepreneurs. You have to build that culture, your core values, and then setting the why and where you guys are going. That's very important. It's easier, people, checking the box and then doing those things. But he said you have to really live it. You have to really drive it, right, every day, so people can see
to create the culture that you want it to be, or try to influence it the best you can. One of my favorite quotes from Peter Drucker, one of the best management consultants of all time, was, "Culture eats strategy for lunch." And I'm sure we've all seen it, right? You see a company they've got all this published strategy and where they're going and everything else, but you see this culture that is contrary to where they're trying to go, and culture will win every time. So you want to make sure that, like he said, you want to invest in trying to create the right culture. So it's aligned with the strategy and not the opposite.
Yeah. One last thing I'll share about John is one thing that always resonates with me is, he was part of several acquisitions, right? As part of his strategy, right? He was acquiring companies to grow. And one of the number one thing he will look at is the leadership and culture and how they've been able to influence and drive that, right? Hopefully I'm not butchering, but I know that that was a big one for him, and how he was very successful to be able to, because when you acquire, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to continue to grow, right? It's like you have to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that look good on paper that didn't pan out that way, and for a lot of reasons, I'm sure.
For sure, but great, thank you. So, and like I said, you never know. Maybe we'll have some coffee with him someday.
That would be amazing.
So, where can our listeners connect with you?
You can connect with us. Our website's innovative-e.com. We also have another company which we've started, as you know, DigiOps. But the best way to go there is Teams4PM, the number 4pm.com. We have blogs, we have podcasts, everything else is there on a resources page on the Innovative E side. The Teams4PM page is not quite as robust yet, but or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I don't remember the exact name of my LinkedIn profile. I think it's Mike Taylor, Innovative E, but you can find me on there if you search.
Perfect. Awesome. And any final thoughts here for our audience?
I just think you're doing an amazing job with this podcast. I think it's really great. I think you probably have, like I said, I've listened to a few. I think you're uncovering a lot of like-minded souls that are out there. I think more than probably, I think most business people probably think more aligned with the way you're thinking. It may not be quite as clear. And you put a really nice kind of package on it with being the kind leadership. But I think most business leaders do really want what's best for their folks and believe that that's the best way to get good business results. So thank you for doing this. I think it's keep it up. I know it's a challenge. We do a podcast too. We haven't been near as disciplined about it lately. We were trying to do one a month and we've missed a couple months. So it's an investment.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. And I do, wonder sometimes, I wake up and it's like, why am I doing this? And it's just the limiting beliefs, or the mind kind of comes up and little person's like, are you really making the investment on the right areas? And again, time and time again, when I tell that voice that pops up, it's like, yes, I am.
Absolutely.
I am, because I'm getting the feedback and the people are really, the guests that I'm bringing in, the different perspective, and then just creating the awareness that you can be an amazing leader and leading through empathy as a kind leader will take you so much farther than otherwise, right?
Yep. Agree 100%.
And having the right mindset, for sure. Well, Mike, thank you very much for joining us today. And I want to thank our audience here for listening and for constantly providing feedback. We'll continue to create episodes, and I'm excited to, we're getting a whole list of folks coming on board. So trying to stay more consistent. It is an investment, like you said, Mike, but I think people want to hear it, and who knows where this is going to continue to take me. From my perspective, what I want selfishly is two things, right? Creating awareness of leading with kindness, and secondary to that is creating the not only the brand, but how Bravo leads within the organization and how we lead and collaborate with our partners as well. So so I appreciate again your time, Mike, and everything that you do. Continue to shine, and everybody out there, be kind, bring value, rise together, everybody.